Hey guys, I'm finally ready to show you what I've been working on for the last year and a half, almost 2 years. This is my triple shifter setup for the Toyota R150, which is the V6 transmission, to the gear-driven RF1A, which is the 22R 4-cylinder transfer case, and we've got two of them stacked up on here. So this is going to be my preliminary installation instructions for this kit. I made a prototype batch of these, and this is the last one I have. This one's sold, so we're actually going to do the instructions in reverse order. As I take it off, I'll explain how it went on. So this has been a massive undertaking. This is easily by far the most hours I've ever put into a product in terms of R&D. There are so many variables, so many moving parts and dimensions you gotta keep aligned. So first things first, this has been designed to work with every RF1A adapter plate on the market. So right here we have the Marlin Crawler inchworm. There's also advanced adapters and trail gear. And so I've worked with customers who have the other two plates to verify the dimensions. And really the only way that's going to affect this kit is going to be how far away it spaces the transmission. And so that problem was easily solved by slotting the front two holes that bolt through the transmission shift tower. So that takes me to my next point. We are going to require the Marlin Crawler short shift tower kit. This thing is just phenomenal in terms of quality, and you're gonna love it. So in R&D, I did go out, I found about every different transmission shift stick that I could, because there's lots of different, they might all seem the same, but there's actually lots of different sticks themselves throughout all the different trucks, 4-cylinder and V6, and they are swappable. But I did try the factory shift tower with all the different sticks, and there was just no setup that worked well. We were able to find one that we were able to make work just for testing over the course of a weekend at a wheeling trip, and by the end of the weekend we were sick of it because it put your shift stick so close to your transfer case levers, and it also shoved the stick so far forward towards the dash because we had to flip the alignment, flip the orientation of the stick, so it went further forward than normal. And while it was okay for testing and just to make sure our triple shift setup worked, for production, we're definitely going to require the Marlin Crawler short shifter. So moving back from there, okay, obviously there's kits out on the market already, and people do this a lot of different ways, and I've seen some really good setups, and I've seen some setups that could really use a lot of help. And so first of all, why did I make this kit? Okay, this is going into the 84 Toyota Kubota swap. So that was a 22R truck. So it had a Ford shift, and I'll just show it to you here. It's right over there. It's the Ford shift. That's actually a G54 with dual cases. And so you can see on the front of that guy, the Ford transfer case is actually right behind the transmission shift. So you can see the transfer case shifter is part of the transmission shifter base. It's right behind it. So instead of having your shift stick, where a lot of kits will just have a base back here and they run something up here to have all your shifters right here at the front transfer case, I wanted to put them all in the stock location directly behind the transmission shift tower so that we could utilize the stock hole in the transmission tunnel, ideally without having to cut it all up, ideally with being able to keep your stock. Obviously you're not going to keep your stock bezel because you're going to 3 sticks, but I didn't want to have to come back and cut like 6 inches further back. Now that being said, the bezel that goes over the hole, the opening in that bezel is actually larger than the hole in the transmission tunnel itself. So you'll have to at least trim enough out of the transmission tunnel to match the hole of the trim bezel. But you should have very, very minimal, if any, cutting of the transmission tunnel beyond the bezel. This is designed to fit the factory holes. And so I measured the 22R trucks as well as the V6 trucks, and there's a pretty big variation, believe it or not. The V6 truck, so it's hard to show. One of the trucks has just a square rectangular slot, and the other one, it kind of looks like it has a little panhandle at the end. So the 22R, you'll definitely have to cut towards the south end of the truck. But this way we have all of our shift sticks positioned right up here, right up front, right behind the transmission, so we can keep our factory tunnel. But what does that mean? That means all of our sticks are going to be right next to the transmission stick. So that's another reason where the short throw comes in, because now the transmission stick is only coming a little bit further back instead of, way back into where it's going to hit these sticks. The next part, okay, the transfer case shift sticks, I've done all the math and the geometry to make sure you can keep all of these sticks aligned with each other. So they're all, when they're basically in the neutral position, they're all parallel, pointing straight up. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, I don't see any shift sticks there, Joe. That's why this is the preliminary video. This is going to be sold at first as a DIY kit. So you notice everything's beautifully anodized or zinc plated except for these shifter bases. And that's because these are bare steel, and this kit will come with a 2-foot length of 5/8 inch rod. And these are made to fit snug inside there. You can come in and you can beautifully weld, you can TIG weld that, you can MIG weld it, whatever you want to do. And you can form these sticks to where you want them, so they fit your truck to your liking, because obviously people might have more than a 1-inch body lift. You might have a 2 or 3, and at that point you'd want your shift stick to be taller by 1 inch or 2 inches. Now this kit requires a 1-inch body lift. There's no getting around it. This sticks up high enough that it would hit the body of the Toyota without the 1-inch body lift. Obviously you can make it work with a 2 or a 3-inch if you want, but there's no way to run this without a 1-inch body lift, or you'd have to cut a hole for all of this, and then at that point this whole thing's kind of a moot point. So the other part that's included is a socket head cap screw that you can weld to the end of the rod so that your shift knob can thread on. Now I don't have the shift boots in stock yet. You can easily find them. I believe the company is JB Customs. I'll leave a link in the description below. But I made a point, and this all works out great. These holes are 5/8 of an inch, so this will go through, and that fits nice and snug. And it works out so that in the future I can thread this rod. I can have these CNC formed and threaded down to that M12 thread for the shifter knob. Now while we're at it right here, let's just go ahead and talk about the shifter knobs. So here's a factory Toyota shifter knob. You can tell it's like a kind of a rubbery outer coating. These things get pretty nasty, being over 40 years old now. And the slot in the bottom where your threads are, that gets worn out and then they get loose. Well, I went ahead and decided to just recreate these, like replicate them. These are made out of Delrin. I actually did a little bit of a change on the top so that we can put our own custom decals on here. And the way these work is you have your pilot hole drilled for your threads, where it threads onto your shift stick. They have the pilot hole drilled, and then they come in and they tap threads in, but they only tap maybe 3/4 of the way through that pilot hole. So once you thread this onto your socket head cap screw, once it gets tight, then you can keep turning and you actually start forming threads deeper in there, and that's what keeps it tight when you torque it on. So we did the same thing with this. You'll tighten this onto the bolt until it feels tight, and then you'll give it another, half turn or turn, whatever feels right, until it's nice and snug. At that point, you can come in and install your decals. And you definitely want to thoroughly degrease this, make sure there's no crud on there, because if this is not clean when you put your sticker on, that sticker's not going to stay on there very long. So I've made it so you can order either 2 knobs or 3 knobs. And I think most people are probably just going to want 3 new knobs so you can run all 3 of these decals, which I'll try to show you here. So you can see this guy says 4-wheel drive and 2-wheel drive. This has your 2.28 to 1 ratio. That has your 4.7 to 1 ratio. And you can select, you know, if you have 2 cases that are 2.28 to 1, I can send you 2 of those. Or if this is the standard setup, 2.28 in the front, 4.7 in the rear. But a lot of people, as I was designing these decals, pointed out, hey, your stickers are backwards. The directions of your numbers are backwards. Well, it's backwards to the other guys' kits. I wanted my sticks to be oriented because I'm OCD and this always drove me nuts. I call it engaged. If I'm engaged, I'm forward. So if I'm in 4-wheel drive, this stick's forward. If I'm in low range, these sticks are forward. If I'm in high range, they're back. If I'm in 2-wheel drive, this is back. Because typically, if we're wheeling, we're going to be in low range in 4-wheel drive, right? So it's an easy visual identifier. I look at my sticks and they're forward, I know, okay, I'm in low range and I'm 4-wheel drive. I've done enough wheeling with my own dual cases and in friends' trucks, and I always get really confused because I see sticks and they're all opposite of each other, and I always forget what the heck's going on. So that was one of the big changes I made with my kit versus the others. Is in my stock orientation, forward is engaged for all the sticks. Now, another big change I made, and I'll zoom in to show you here. So that brings me to my next point, which is how I've made my transfer case base work. So other kits, it's basically fixed. The way you attach from the outside to the inside, it's all one solid mechanism. Everything's either machined or welded solid. And so you're either pulling from the bottom or you're pulling from up above. And I haven't seen any kits that give you the flexibility to flip that. So on my kit, I've made this ear on the outside actually bolts on. So there's a slot, it's like a wrench going onto the head of a bolt. This slides over, this is like your wrench, and the rod inside's like a bolt, and it slides over, and then this bolt here just clamps it on and keeps it from sliding off. So if you wanted to, you could flip this up and flip your cases around. Obviously at that point, then my decals aren't going to match, and since I have to order an absolute massive quantity of each sticker, I'm not going to make more stickers. I'm just going to offer what I showed you here a moment ago. But you can have the flexibility to mount this up or below. This also gives me the potential to make a new style of arm that would mimic these guys up here. I can put one of those on here. You can have your shift stick just come straight up off the transfer case itself. And that will be coming very soon. The next phase in this whole plan is to offer just this standalone shift tower kit with 2 DIY sticks coming up off of it. So while we're on this guy here, this is all anodized. I'm not going to show you the guts in this video, but I've used essentially factory style Toyota hardware. Everything's zinc plated. Our tie rod ends have PTFE inserts. I have oil light bushings on the inside. Other kits use just simple O-rings. Things are welded. Nothing's plated. It's all bare steel, bare aluminum. Things are really sloppy. And back to my OCD, I wanted something that shifts, if not as smooth as, you know, OEM, smoother. You look at this transfer case shifter from the factory. It is tight, it's solid, they take tons of abuse, and I wanted something tight and solid. I hate having lots of slop in the shift sticks. I'm going to make another video down the road comparing multiple different kits, because I tried lots of different things that were on the market and I was not at all pleased with. Either they were too tight to move or they were too sloppy. So everything has been designed to have replaceable nylon bushings. I've got oilite bushings in here to keep things both lubricated and tight, and all the hardware is designed so that it's easy to remove, and yet you can tighten it down and it's not going to move on you once it's installed. So quickly here now, I will try to show you just exactly how the shift sticks themselves function, and then we'll start tearing it apart, and I'll explain to you where every nut and bolt goes along the way. So we are going to retain our factory front transfer case shift stick. You will have to cut this off and deburr the edge. So you'll have a locking collar that goes on the bottom, and that basically sets your height. And then this guy goes on like that. And then you have another locking collar that goes on the top. All right, so the one thing you could change up if you wanted, you could actually flip this guy over to this side, but the clearance between this bolt head and this lock nut over here is so incredibly tight, I like to just put it over here. And so this turnbuckle, tie rod end, whatever you want to call it, this guy has to thread all the way in here. So this needs to be essentially bottomed out. So the male threads actually get cut off because they don't make these short enough to where this will thread all the way in. You actually have to cut the threads off to make that fit in all the way. So at that point, then this shifts just like stock. So there's high range, there's neutral, there's low range. So over here, same thing. You have high range, missed it, neutral, and low range. And then over here, it's just simply forward is 4-wheel drive and back is 2-wheel drive. So on all these, they're going to be extremely tight as you get them set up. They're going to require a little bit of a break-in period just to get things moving and broken in. But you do want to set everything up almost as tight as possible. So let's start from the top, we'll work our way back. So I showed you how you install the middle transfer case lever. That's simple enough. So that's just using your 2 lock collars. That's going to use an 1/8 inch and a 9/64 Allen key set. There's only one 3/8 bolt in this whole kit, so that's your 1 1/4 inch, and you got your serrated flange nut. And I like the serrated flange nut because then that'll bite into the metal, and so you don't want to torque on the nut, you want to torque the bolt head down, because the nut, once that bites into the metal, the serrations keep the nut from spinning. And on any of these fasteners, feel free to use blue Loctite. I wouldn't use red Loctite, but you can use blue Loctite, and that will prevent things from vibrating loose while still allow you to get them off down the road. And you'll want to position your Allen heads on your lock collars to the outside so that you can get to them once this is installed under the truck. And obviously when you're mocking this up and you're building your shift sticks, you're going to want to keep things loose, not Loctited, so that you can easily get them off to go back and forth. So your turnbuckles here, or your tie rod ends, whatever you want to call these are adjustable, obviously. So you put an equal amount of thread into each tie rod end and to get these leveled out, because this guy, the middle stick's pretty much not going to be adjustable. It's going to land where it lands, and then you'll adjust these two to match that, and then you just tighten your lock nuts. And so one side's left-hand thread and one side's right-hand thread. And usually there's some kind of marking on your tie rod ends to indicate that it's left-hand thread. Now I do need to point out that the four-wheel drive indicator light slot may interfere with this tie rod end. You may not be able to install that sensor. You might have to plug this hole. And if you really don't want to do that, you could always flip this up. You could reverse the orientation of this tab. And again, then your decal wouldn't match for this stick. But honestly, if you're running triple sticks, the four-wheel drive indicator light is only going to tell you if you're in two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. It's not going to tell you anything about high range or low range. And it's so simple. Either your stick is forward or it's back. If it's forward, it's four-wheel drive. If it's back, it's two-wheel drive. So that's why I thought I could justify omitting this sensor if needed, because you're already going to be intimately in tune with what's going on here with triple shift sticks. So shouldn't really need a light to tell you that you're in four-wheel drive. Up front here is just a bolt. It's an M8 with your nut. There's no washers or anything else. However, down here on the back for your four-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, you will have an M8 flat washer that's got to go on before your tie rod end can go on. And then again, it's just a standard nut. I'm not using lock nuts on these because that would make these extremely difficult to get off when this is installed in the truck. Now this bolt here with this ear, that's going to be mechanically locked in. That can't come out until you either take this bolt out and pull the tab off, or you take this whole shift base off. On this side, there is no washer. It's just the nut with the bolt coming through the ear. Now, depending on what I have in stock, you may have the same style of standard M8 bolt on the back here, or you might have a lower profile head that's a gold color. And then lastly, up front here, this guy does have a spacer that has to go on before your tie rod end. Just this unthreaded spacer. That's stainless steel, so you don't have to worry about that rusting. So next we'll look at our shifter base. So these are going to be M12 headed bolts. So you do have just a breather cap. That's 1/8 inch NPT. That just lets the gases inside escape as your oil heats up. So when you install this, it's usually a good idea to have, which I should have done and I forgot, to have your sticks lined up so that you can have these even with each other. Otherwise, you'll just have to look inside and make sure that these line up as you're pushing it down. But now you can see our M8 bolts that go through our ears until I drop them. You have your factory style bolts. The shorter of the two go through to hold this to the transfer case. So I am not going to disable this whole assembly in this video, but you can see we've got our nylon washer there behind the ear. You've got nylon washers here on the inside. You've got nylon washers in between here, and then these are married so that they're deburred so they can pivot on each other. Oil light bushings in here. These bolts are stainless steel. They actually have thread locker applied to them. So basically, if this does not come to you assembled, if you have to assemble it, you want to install it. So these ears should be very hard to move. That means, you know, this thing's as tight as it's going to ever be. And then as you start breaking it in with shifts, it's going to start loosening up. but I made a point so that these bolt heads land on this surface, so they're mechanically locked in. So these bolts can never unthread and fall out and go into your transfer case. All right, up front here, again, we have some factory style with the captive washers, and they're gonna also be your M12. I tried to match your bolt head diameter so you don't have to have 5 billion different socket sizes. I definitely do recommend not using an impact for installation. Make sure your bolts can go all the way down without bottoming out. So you can see here, these are going to be kind of your middle length bolts for the shift base going to the front transfer case. And then up front, you do get new hardware with the Marlin kit, but you will only use 2 of those bolts on the front. On the rear, you're going to have to use my bolts. They're also M12 head. The difference with these is they're just a flanged head. They're not a captive washer. So those 2 long flanged heads go up front. So this is pretty complex. So this whole plate is zinc plated. All my spacers are custom made and they're all welded on so that you don't have to try holding those on when you install this plate. So the order of installation on this guy is basically going to be, I would do this side first and this side second. So you are going to have an Allen head bolt here and a serrated, so you're going to have an Allen bolt here and a serrated nut here. So again, this guy you want to bite into the metal and then you want to actually tighten the Allen head. Now this guy's going to come with thread locker pre-applied. This is a 3/16 drive, and you're going to be able to tell when you install this. Sorry, I fell out of frame there. You're going to be able to tell when you install this how tight is too tight. The nice thing here is you can play with this and tighten it or loosen it and basically set your load on the shift stick to where you're comfortable with it. So when you go to install this, make sure you put this, it's called zinc flake coating. You put this gray looking socket head cap screw through because it's going to be pretty difficult to install it after you've already put this on. These get oil light bushings inside. So this is a shoulder bolt and it has a specific shoulder diameter, and then these bushings are a very tight tolerance. So you have the shoulder bolt rides inside this bushing. So that should give us a very nice long life of free spinning motion, but not loose or sloppy. It's going to be a nice tight precision fit. So there you can see that yellow thread locker that's already on there. And here's another serrated flange nut. And then lastly, on this side, again, you have a shoulder bolt, same thing, serrated flange nut. And so the order of installation on this guy, all 3 of these shifter bases are the same. They have oil light bushings that go in them. The only thing to take note of here is you do have a washer out here on the end just to cover up the flange of that oil light bushing. And this spacer here is basically hammered in there. It's not welded in, it's just a zinc plated bushing, but it's a very tight fit. Basically, I put this in here before I ship this out and run a drill bit through and make sure everything's lined up, and that's a nice tight fit for you. So that should not ever fall out. That's basically hammered in there. The only other thing I want to mention is on this base, these are just a 1/4 inch thread, so don't go crazy on these when you're tightening these down. It'd be pretty easy to snap one of these off if you went overkill on it. And with that, I think that pretty much covers everything. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm basically at this point waiting to gauge interest. I've got the prototype kits sold, so we'll get this shipped out, see what people think about it. If I'm going to bring the cost on all this stuff down, I need to make a lot of parts. If I could make a bunch of these, that would really help. The shifter base, you know, that's mainly hardware, honestly. The welded part, that's pretty minimal. It's a lot of dollars in hardware. The big cost is in machining this thing. So if you guys think this would be a good product for me to release just as a standalone with shift sticks coming up off of it, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And my goal for sale price is to keep this R150 RF1A kit under $500. This, I don't have a price in mind yet. It really depends on how much interest is there and if I can make a ton of these, because it's really all about quantity, is how cheap I'm going to be able to make these. And then if there's interest, which I haven't seen any yet, if there's interest for the W56 Ford shift or the G54, which is also a Ford shift, if there's interest in those kits, that's going to take a little bit more work, because for those, I would actually have to make the transmission, basically a transmission shift tower lift kit. So basically it makes it into a short throw shifter. Instead of having this welded piece, I would have a machined aluminum piece, and it all worked basically the same. It's going to cost more because you're going to have a 1-inch thick chunk of aluminum that's machined instead of this welded steel piece. If there's interest, if you guys want that, if you want to be able to move all 3 of your shift sticks right up to the factory Ford shift location on your G54 or your W56, let me know, because I got those transmissions in the shop. You just saw one sitting on the floor right now. And I haven't designed, like, I have the concept down, but I haven't actually measured and taken dimensions of things yet. And I got to make a decision here pretty soon, because I need to get this stuff off my shop floor. It's been sitting here for 2 years. Otherwise, they're going on Marketplace and they're going to get sold. So again, let me know. G54, G52, that's like your carbureted 22R, and then the W56 that came with the fuel injected 22RE. If you want this same style of kit for those transmissions, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, let me know what you think about this kit. I hope there's some excitement around it, because I haven't even kept track of how many hours I have into designing all this stuff and how many hundreds of dollars I've wasted on hardware, because everything's so tight, like getting everything to fit, the bolt heads and the nuts fitting and being able to move past everything. It took forever to get it all locked down. But we're there with this one. The final stage is going to be, if there's enough interest, the shift sticks, the actual rod, I'll have those CNC machined, CNC formed. They'll bend them, and then they'll CNC machine the threads on the end so the shift knobs can thread right on like stock. And then I'll have those black zinc plated so they look like a stock shift rod, because a stock shift rod's like powder coated black. It'll match that look, so it'll look OEM. I don't want to mess with paint because you can scratch that pretty easily. So anyway, I'm starting to ramble. So again, let me know what you think down in the comments, and we'll see you for part 2 of this installation once I have the shift sticks ready to go. Thanks, guys.